Hey, what's going on, everyone? Another quick video today. Um, yeah, I did a video and recorded a podcast last night on the NFL over the weekend. Vesty also recorded one on the way home from work. Um, yeah, go and check them out. Go give them a listen. It's just our thoughts if you're an NFL fan, obviously. It's our thoughts and whatnot over what happened over the weekend. Vesty did a good one on one of his wee drive homes, ranting and raving as usual. I did one yesterday and recorded the video now, as everybody knows. That's kind of what's happening at the minute. Did the wee video, threw it up on the YouTube as well, on the rest of the sites also. But yeah, on that video I said that I was gonna do a video on Chelsea and Liverpool today. Like, one of our football episodes that we do is called Talking Points. I was gonna do one today on Chelsea and Liverpool, what's happened with Chelsea, Frank Lampard and everything, and then the sort of struggles that Liverpool are having. I kind of went a wee bit off the rails as far as the Chelsea stuff went. Started taking a few notes, a few talking points, a few bullet points, and it just got a lot. So I decided I'll do Chelsea today. I'll maybe do a Liverpool one tomorrow, and yeah, that's the plan. So I just got into it a wee bit with Chelsea here. I'll let you know why shortly. So I just, as I said, I went a wee bit nuts with the Chelsea stuff. I wanted to talk a lot about what's gone on, what has gone, everything, the future a little bit as well. So I took a lot of stuff down, and I thought I'd just do the video on Chelsea instead, and then I'll maybe do something with Liverpool tomorrow. Keep up to date. Go follow our Instagram page. I think Vesty's going to do a few more things this week. He's talking about doing it. Big Dev's even chimed in. I think he's going to do something as well. So yeah. There'll be more stuff coming. As I said, give our Instagram page a follow. It'll be good for finding out where everything is and what's been uploaded to just the audio platforms, and then anything uploaded to YouTube as well. So go over and give us a follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and all that stuff. Right, Chelsea. Where to start? Where to start with Chelsea? I suppose the best way to start this with Chelsea is to sort of give you my opinion on them, what I think of Chelsea. And full disclosure, I suppose, if anybody's listened to the podcast before, I'm pretty sure it's been brought up, but like when I was incredibly young, maybe 7, 6, 7, 8 possibly, and I don't even think it might have been as far as 8, I supported Chelsea. I like the colour blue, and I loved Gianfranco Zola. He was the first player that I really, really, really liked. That was my die-hard support of Chelsea at the time. By about 98, I remember watching good bits of the World Cup. I think it was the first thing that really got me properly into football. And then it was Liverpool after that. You started getting jerseys, started collecting cards, all that sort of crack. So it was Liverpool from pretty early on. I have like stuff like when David James was our keeper, and really bad Liverpool jerseys from the 90s as well. So the Chelsea support didn't last long. So that's my early position on Chelsea. But me now and what I think of them, I dislike Chelsea. Like, football's all about rivalry and support and fandom and all that sort of carry on. And it's good to have your rivals. It's good to have opinions on different teams, but I dislike Chelsea. I dislike Chelsea a lot. So much so that I not very rarely, I watch Manchester United play, I watch City play, and but I never really, I can enjoy their games to an extent, in a way, but I dislike watching. I dislike so much about Chelsea. Like, we did a good podcast earlier on in the year, or earlier on last year. It was the history of rivalry. We did it between, obviously, to start us off anyway. We'll come back to it. I thought it was a good podcast, but we did it on history of rivalry, and we did it on Liverpool and Manchester United. Diving into the history of the rivalry, the history of the two clubs. It's the similarities that is what makes them hate each other, and success, I suppose, in a way. That came out very evidently in that podcast. Go and give it a listen if you haven't already. It's good. I hate Manchester United. I do. They're Liverpool's biggest rival, no doubt about it, and I dislike them to the, just whatever degree. But I respect Manchester United, and me and Crippy, when we did the podcast, Vesty was meant to be there that night, but when we did the podcast, it came across like there's a healthy respect for the other side as far as Manchester United goes. You know, the similarities between the two clubs, the history, the links, and the people, the supporters, and everything too. The way they carry themselves, the way they carry on, their fandom for their club is all very similar. So there's a little bit of respect in there as far as Manchester United goes, but I don't like Chelsea at all. I suppose it starts from probably them sort of early 2000s when Rafa Benitez joined and Jose Mourinho joined Chelsea. Liverpool and Chelsea had their sort of battles in that period in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s, 2004 onwards really. And I've sort of hated them ever since. And then, you get a wee bit older, you start looking a wee bit deeper into clubs, you understand opposition clubs a wee bit more. Like, as I said, it's at that point in time when you're 14, 15, it's just kind of your club's shit, I hate your club and every player that's ever put the jersey on. But, you get a wee bit older, you like to, me personally, I like to learn about the history of football, different regions, continents, countries, I like to learn about other clubs too. And, I love all that shit, really and truly. But, yeah, because of all that, I dislike Chelsea. It's always hard to put, like, there's obviously die-hard and loyal fans for every club, and they love their club for that for their reasons. But I could never see me liking, even though I did at a point, but I could never see me, you can never see yourself as a different fan for a different team, because, different teams have different identities, they're different ideologies, different, histories and stuff, and you can buy, and as a football fan or whatever, you kind of buy into all that. And you would find yourself very hard, to support somebody else or whatever. Even some football fans, you kind of, if you're a fan of a team in England or you're a fan of a team locally or whatever it is, you kind of, you maybe have not like a second team, but you maybe see a team somewhere else. Like Liverpool, for example, have quite the connection with Borussia Dortmund right now. With Klopp and all that, they're carrying on too, but they kind of feel similar. They sing "You'll Never Walk Alone," we do. Liverpool have a link with Celtic as well, and all that sort of. So you kind of, other clubs you kind of maybe admire a little bit from afar because they're similar to yours, stuff like that. But, as far as, a different team, Chelsea, I could never, they're so different. They're so different to what Liverpool are that I think that's what rubs me the wrong way a little bit. I think that Liverpool and Manchester United are similar in so many ways, but Chelsea are very different, in my opinion. And that's why I dislike them as much as I dislike them. I dislike them more than any other team in London. I dislike them more than Arsenal. I dislike them more than Spurs. I just don't like Chelsea. But yeah, so that's my bias up front. Entirely, it's entirely out there. That's what I think of Chelsea. So there might be some bias influence in this video. There probably is. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Chelsea. And now I'll get into what I think Chelsea are. A little bit of history, and then sort of bring it up and talk everything about, Frank Lampard and everything that's happened in this last few days. So what do I see Chelsea as? What do I see Chelsea as? What are they as? What is Chelsea Football Club? So, obviously, Chelsea is a very wealthy, borough of London, or is it a borough the right word? But yeah, it's a very wealthy area of London. It's down there near Kensington. It's near Buckingham Palace. It's right down on the Thames. That's Chelsea. That's where Chelsea's from. It's West London. And Chelsea always strikes me, and throughout its history has shown itself to be what I see football as is the working man's game, the working class game. I did some history of sport in school, stuff like that. There, you had to learn a little bit about it. Football was always classed as that. It's the working man's game. Now, there's probably working men and everything, working women, in that go to Chelsea, that are their local hardened support. There's always going to be that within every club. Um, but the way I see Chelsea and the way that they kind of have carried themselves, portrayed themselves in the history of the club, they feel like a posh club, a money club, you know, flash club. This happened from their very inception in the 1900s. It was a wealthy area of London, and in the early 1900s they had money as well. They had a name, was it the Retirees or something? A lot. They broke records for fan attendance and stuff very early on, and obviously early 1900s maybe people had a bit more money in that area and region, could maybe afford to go to the game more, and that's why they broke record attendances. And they were known even back then for signing expensive players, um, and stuff like that. That carried it well up into the 50s and 60s. They won their first league title and stuff in then too. As I said, they were known for signing flash players, known for splashing the cash. They were from a wealthy area, and that, everybody will sort of say, "Oh, Chelsea was founded in 2003 or whatever." But this sort of history of spending money, flash, rich, wealthy club, maybe not as working class as some other clubs, has been there since their foundations, really. The club was bought in, what was it, 1982 by Ken Bates for £1. They struggled. They went, was it 25 years without a trophy? And then they sort of came back a little bit in the 90s. And this is my early recollection of them. They were, they still were back then, even like a rich foreign flash club. In my opinion, that's the way that they felt. You think of the likes of Zola, Vialli, Desai, all these players in the 90s. That's who you think. That's who I always assumed. That's who I always, related with Chelsea. Foreign players, money, wealth, classiness, a little bit upperclassness, stuff like that. There, flash, rich image. That's just the way I felt with Chelsea. And then obviously everything changes in 2003 with Roman Abramovich. He comes in, he pumps money into the club like no man's business. He's sort of the first major owner to do this within England. I know that there was the Blackburn move and stuff, but nobody had really seen anything like this before. Russian oligarch comes in, but in my opinion, he maintained the image of Chelsea Football Club in a way. Splashing the cash, flash foreign players, very highly paid, and suave as well. Everything fits into where they're at and where they're from, in my opinion. We brought in Jose Mourinho very early. Slick Portuguese, well dressed, suits, good looking. And this is what Chelsea have become. They're rich, they're famous. Maybe people would say they've bought their fame, and they've become incredibly successful. They've become an incredibly successful club. They're the first London side to win the European Cup. They've had multiple league titles now as well, and things have changed since 2003. That they have a history, a long history, but since then things have definitely taken a turn. This is Chelsea's best. This is Chelsea's golden era, and it's a lot of clubs like to base their history and where they're from on their old past achievements, but this is Chelsea now. This is what Chelsea are. But as I said, they have a history of this going back the entire way through. Now, they did have struggles in sort of the 70s, the 80s, but they are a big club. They're one of the biggest clubs in England, but they've matured into that and built themselves into that in this last sort of 15, 16 years. So that's what I think Chelsea are right now. The culture of it, the fan support, the money, the wealth, the suave, the flash, a heavy Italian connection, which kind of fits in with the suave flashness as well. You think of some of the managers, the players, it all fits. But that's what I think Chelsea are and have been. So, Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard was there for this. Frank Lampard is probably Chelsea's greatest ever player. Yeah, it's probably a toss-up. I would say some Chelsea fans will maybe say John Terry. Some will say Frank. But he's up there, regardless. He was captain, vice captain in Chelsea's, greatest ever run. It was him, it was John Terry, and then everybody else around him. He was a fantastic player for them, absolutely fantastic. And yeah, he was there in Chelsea's most successful era, probably their most defining era as far as their club history goes. You could say maybe Liverpool in the 70s and the 80s, that was their defining era. Maybe slightly before that with Shankly. Manchester United over the 20-year span of Ferguson's career. So, or near on 20-year span. So, Frank Lampard was key in that. An absolute cog. And it was an appointment that, it is what it is. It was an appointment made because of who Frank Lampard was, and not because Frank Lampard was an unbelievable coach. Now, this is sort of getting back into what my opinion again. I've been kind of vocal since we started the podcast, and I don't think Frank Lampard is good enough. But he was sort of given a pass last year. I know Vesti and Dev defended him a little. He did a fairly good job, but I had my own opinions on what Frank Lampard was and is. He had a freebie last year. He brought through some of the youth players, which was good. You think of the likes of Tammy Abraham kicking on. Fikayo Tomori made appearances. Mason Mount. So he had a freebie last year. He came in. He lost his best player in Eden Hazard and did fairly. He did okay. I kind of took a turn a little bit. At least I probably had negative thoughts going in with it anyway, because I didn't think that it was right that they sacked him. Sorry. He finished third in the league. He won the Europa League and then was booted out the door. I didn't like that. I thought Sarri did a good job for his first season. It was sort of in the mix of that Liverpool and Manchester City great run, and he had a hard time. He wasn't going to catch them two teams at that point in time, and I felt, he was let go after a season. Now, Chelsea do get a lot of hate for this. This is what Chelsea have done this a lot before, but I actually quite liked Sarri. I thought he was a unique character. I thought he played some good football, all the stuff with Napoli and everything, and I thought that he was sort of shortchanged a bit and sort of scapegoated a bit, and I didn't like it. So Lampard was brought in, fair enough, and they had the transfer ban. Chelsea do get a lot of criticism, but as I said, I think some of it's warranted. But yeah, look, Lampard did okay last season. But he did okay with Derby as well. He got them to the playoffs final. He didn't win automatic promotion with Derby. He finished 6th in the league, so he was right at the bottom of the playoffs, and then got beaten in the playoffs final. Like, he did fine with Derby. He played some nice stuff. He did okay. It was grand. It showed you that his level is definitely sort of where it was there. He did okay there. He was then given the job straight away. It's obviously one of them appointments. It's, ex-club legend. Give him a chance. You think of Ollie, you think of Arteta, like even the return of maybe like a Kenny Dalglish for Liverpool back in 2012, 2010, whatever it was. But yeah, he did okay. Given a wee bit of a free pass last season, they had the transfer ban, he had the opportunity to bring through this youth movement. I was sort of saying that I know that there's a youth movement coming, but at the same time I was sort of saying, Chelsea's going to spend dough at some point here, and a lot of these players that Frank's brought through in this new youth revolution. Now, to be fair, they did sign players that were quite young, but I was sort of getting at it like they're going to go sign players now. This is what they're going to do. This is what Chelsea have done for the last 15, 16 years. This is what Chelsea are known for. This is who they are. There's going to be players like Tammy Abraham are going to be sacrificed for this, even though he's played quite well. But I was like, they're going to sign somebody. They're going to sign a striker and he'll be replaced. Werner comes in, even Giroud, he's been playing quite well, but, Tammy Abraham has now been dropped out of the squad. More recently, he's been dropped back in. The big sign to Kai Havertz as well. I think Tomori went to AC Milan as well. They brought in Thiago Silva. So, I could see it coming. I could see that, this isn't going to last, and I didn't think that Frank was good enough yet. I've said this on the podcast a few times. I'm not saying that Frank Lampard will never be a good manager. I am not saying that Frank Lampard isn't a good manager. I'm saying that right now Frank Lampard isn't a good manager for Chelsea. He's young, he's inexperienced, he hasn't learnt his trade yet, he hasn't really applied his football and philosophy yet on what way he wants to play. Really, really in depth. You can kind of see what he wants to do, but it's in his fledgling years, as is he as a manager. As I said, maybe 5 years. I think even Carragher said it more recently on Sky Sports that he would love to see Frank Lampard at the Chelsea job, but in 10 years' time. I agree with that. I don't think that it's like I'm saying that he's shit and he's never going to be good and that's it. He's done at the top level. No, I don't know. Like he could be. This might be as good as Frank Lampard ever gets it, but maybe not. Maybe he goes away now, goes somewhere else. Develops a team and comes back in 5, 6, 7, 8 years' time and has another rattle at it. But I didn't think he was good enough. Last season he lost 12 games for Chelsea. And coming with a young team, coming with a young manager, there's going to be inconsistencies, there's going to be road bumps, speed bumps, whatever way you want to put it. They're not going to be him. He's not going to be good enough to keep them consistent, and the team isn't going to be good enough to be consistent. Especially with a younger, more naive manager. So he lost 12 games last season. That was more than Arsenal lost last season. They finished 8th. I think that both Manchester United and Chelsea benefited a little bit from the sort of injury crisis meltdown that happened at Leicester. Leicester were better than both them teams for a good portion of last season, I thought. And then Leicester have a good side, but once you take 3 or 4 pieces out of it, it completely falls apart because they don't have a lot of depth. Both Chelsea and Manchester United benefited from Leicester kind of falling apart last year, I feel. And that's when, obviously the end of last season rolled around or whatever, we were doing the podcast and I was sort of saying Frank's not it. Like, I sort of said a little bit earlier, but that's what I was kind of getting at. I was like, Frank isn't, Frank and Chelsea aren't ready right now. As I said, not that he's shit and he's never going to be good, just that right now Frank isn't the guy for Chelsea. They have invested as we all do, and as we kind of beat we kind of beat Chelsea with that stick. Like, they don't give managers enough time, and I've done it before. Like I literally said, I've done it with Sarri. I think he was thrown under the bus a little, but I was just saying, like, Frank's just not good enough now, and it rolls into this season, and I have no idea what Chelsea are turning up. I have no idea. You watch them, sometimes they look electric, sometimes they look very fast paced, creating and scoring goals, and then other times they look lethargic, they look dodgy at the back, they lose games, lose silly games. They don't make much sense to me, Chelsea. I have no idea when I put them on the TV what Chelsea I'm going to see turn up. They're very inconsistent. It's the halfway point in this season, and they've lost 6 games already, so they're right on track to be exactly where they were last season, and their league position kind of reflects it a bit more now. They are 8th or 9th as far as time of recording, I'm pretty sure, which is the 26th of January. So they're right on course to lose 12 games again this year, which, if you want to be in the top 4 and competing or up that far end, maybe this season's a little different, but you can't be losing 12 games in a season. And there was a sort of, it's maybe Kepa's fault that was thrown about last season. They've replaced Kepa. They've brought in Thiago Silva, who's an experienced centre half. So Alonso got bit. The finger was pointed at Alonso a bit too. Not good defensively, and I've done that too. But at the same time, if these things have been replaced, and there hasn't been the kick on and improvement that they were hoping for. And then some of the signings that they've brought in, namely Werner and Havertz, hasn't fitted in. And Lampard isn't experienced enough to take a young, talented squad, mould them, build them together, create an identity, and move forward yet, I don't think. And not yet. I think that he could do it lower down where there's less pressure, and he maybe has the time to do it. But as far as doing it at Chelsea, because of your expectations, Lampard knows better than anybody what Chelsea's expectations are. It's, you better be in the top 4 at the very least, and you have to win things. So that's my thoughts specifically on Frank Lampard. Some of their more recent games, they lost 1-0 to Everton, they lost 2-1 to Wolves, 3-0 to West Ham. They won. Arsenal, they lost 3-1. Villa, they drew 1-1. They lost 3-1 to City. They beat Fulham 1-0. And they lost to Leicester in the league 2-0. So there's a mixed array of stuff there. 2 wins in their last 8 games. It was coming. We all know now that he's been sacked, which is fair, I think, at this point. He knows better than anybody what Chelsea entails, what the Chelsea job entails, and it looks like he's been replaced by Thomas Tuchel. So this is where my bias will come a little bit back in again. There has been some murmurings in the Chelsea fan base online and stuff that they are furious with this, that because it's Frank. Now, I've sort of laid out why I think he's not good enough right now, but because it's Frank, they're angry as all hell. This is what Chelsea do though. Like, any Chelsea fans that are maybe watching, you are bound to have seen this coming. This is what Chelsea do. They sacked Carlo Ancelotti after winning the double. They've sacked better managers than Frank Lampard for less. They sacked Carlo Ancelotti after winning the double. They sacked Roberto Di Matteo after winning the European Cup. They sacked Sarri as well after finishing third and winning the Europa League. When Rafa Benitez joined, they booed. Now, I'm a Liverpool fan. I love Rafa Benitez. He hated Chelsea, and Chelsea hated him, but he swallowed his pride and went there. I don't know if I would have booed him. I don't know. If he was now my manager, I don't know if I would have booed him. And that happened. So where I find it interesting, and what I find interesting going forward is this a bit of a turning point for Chelsea? Is this, I think that they get reeled in a little bit with, the youth movement that Frank brought in last season. I think that, it's always really nice for your team, or the team that you support, to bring through academy graduates. There's something nice about it. It's sort of universally agreed. There's very little football fans agree on, but bringing through youth players, especially if they're from the local area, or if they just came through your academy and have been there for a long time, there's something nice about seeing that. Like Liverpool have it with Trent and Curtis Jones. I know that the United men like it with the likes of Rashford and who else? Mason Greenwood. Arsenal would say Bukayo Saka, who's been there for a long time, coming through the ranks and stuff. There's something nice about that, and it's one thing the football fans agree on. They do enjoy their youth players coming through. And I think that reeled Chelsea fans in a little bit last season. They enjoyed that. They liked it. Like, don't get me started on Chelsea's youth exploitation that they've done for the last 16 years. It's the reason that they caught a European ban, for one thing. But that youth movement, and then giving the players the opportunity, has been... I think that reeled them in a little bit. And then because it was Frank, also helped. But I'm fascinated to see what happens going forward. Is this I've seen some stuff that Chelsea fans are very unhappy because it was Frank. Now, I don't think Frank was good enough personally right now, but Chelsea, it would be like if Liverpool sacked Steven Gerrard for me, But look, this is where I find it interesting. Is this the point that there has been things that have turned off Chelsea fans from some of the board's actions, but then putting my biased hat on again, Chelsea fans are fickle, in my opinion, and I wouldn't... spoilt, maybe, is the word I'd use. They turned on probably their greatest ever manager in Jose Mourinho the second time round, turned on him. They booed Rafa Benitez. They actively sort of campaigned for the sacking of Maurizio Sarri like about 8 months in, from the summertime to just after Christmas. Like, Sarri finished third and won that Europa League with a lot of fan pressure and stuff. The fans didn't want him there. So now, though, because it is Frank, and they've done the same as what they've done time and time again with managers, much better managers than Frank Lampard and Ancelotti, Benitez, Di Matteo. Well, maybe not Di Matteo, but Di Matteo won the European Cup. And Mourinho, both times. Mourinho the first and second time, especially the second time. it's now different because it's Frank and there's more emotion involved. They're not really that happy with it. So I'm interested to see, is this the point where there's maybe a change at Chelsea, or if there's maybe a change in the fan base or a change of thought. They have been very successful under Roman Abramovich. He's done what the club has done for a lot of their history. Bought, spent, flash players. A lot of like you think of the Italian managers too. There's all that connection. That's why I started this off with that. You think of Ancelotti, Di Matteo, Sarri, Vialli, Zola, all the way through. Conte as well. Conte left in bad terms. So is this the point where Chelsea maybe turn a little bit? Chelsea have this reputation of your remit as manager is you come here, you win trophies. If you start to slip, you're out the door, no matter if it's your first year, second year, whatever. I think I'm correct in saying that there's no Chelsea manager since Mourinho's first spell, I don't think there's a Chelsea manager that has lasted more than 2 years. I think that's correct. So this is what they do. But now because it's Frank, it's different. So I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing what the fallout is of this, and is there any changes that happen within Chelsea Football Club, or maybe a sort of turning on the owners possibly, because with Frank being maybe their greatest ever player, it's a lot more emotional now. But yeah, just to round us out a little bit then, Tuchel. Tuchel's an interesting one. Tuchel has left his last 2 jobs on bad terms with owners, so that fits right into the Chelsea model. He left Dortmund on poor terms. He left PSG on poor terms. Now he followed Jurgen Klopp into Mainz after Jurgen left, and then he followed him into Dortmund after Jurgen left. He's a range of success. I think he's a good coach, but he's very demanding, and it's very his way or the highway, which I think initially probably could get a bounce out of these players, galvanise the group, maybe check a few egos that are possibly running around the dressing room. And I think that initially he'll get a bounce. He's a better manager than Frank Lampard. And I think that it might be a good move. Well, look, when I say I think that the move will work out, I think that Chelsea have a lot of talented players. I think that he's a good coach. I think that he can coach younger players. Some of you think of the likes of Havertz and Werner, he'll probably have a good connection with them. But what do you define as success at Chelsea? I think that Chelsea have enough good players there that they could challenge for a title in the next couple of seasons and maybe win a trophy or 2 on the way. And I think that maybe Tuchel can do that. I think Tuchel could come in, win maybe a Europa League or an FA Cup or something along those lines, and maybe challenge for a title. But the thing is will he be there long enough? Now Chelsea fans will say, well, if you were gonna bring in Tuchel and all he's going to be there as a year and a half, he's going to fall out with Abramovich, he'll win 1 trophy and then he'd be gone. Why would you have sacked Frank Lampard? Well, because that's what Chelsea do. That's exactly what Chelsea have been for the last 14 years, and there's better managers that have been through this. It's just interesting now because it was Frank. So that's my thoughts. It's interesting because it was Frank. I think that Tuchel can be good. I think that he could win something. But, he could be gone in 18 months. And it's very likely that he'll be gone in 18 months. But, that's the debate. Well, why would you have sacked Frank Lampard if all you're going to do is bring in another manager to be sacked? And I'm hearing them things from Chelsea fans now, or seeing it online, different bits and pieces. So, that's fine. But this is exactly what has happened for the last 14 years of Chelsea's existence, the most significant period in probably their entire history. And fans and Chelsea support have been active in this. Chelsea actively wanted rid of Maurizio Sarri. Chelsea actively turned on Jose Mourinho. So these fans that are now saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have done this to Frank. Well, you have done this for 14 years and Abramovich has done it, and there hasn't been too much of a peep out of it. I know that there was some stuff over the stadium. There's a bit of pushback on the stadium and moving away for some of the history and the ashes buried in the penalty spot and stuff. But look, that's just my thoughts. It's probably incredibly biased because I don't like Chelsea. But that's my thoughts. It's different now because it's Frank Lampard, but this is what Chelsea have been, the support has been, the club has been, and the ownership has been for the last 14, 15 years, and some of them aspects flow further back. So that's just my thoughts. on Chelsea, the second of Frank Lampard, and everything surrounding it. And hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe there's some Chelsea fans watching. If you are watching, this will be on YouTube. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is it different now because it's Frank? And has that brought more emotion, into the decision? And where, but your greatest ever manager and Jose Mourinho was turned on. So that's just my thoughts. I will do a video tomorrow on Liverpool's troubles and struggles, the sort of issues around the centre half, why we aren't performing, maybe some stuff, the FSG stuff has appeared again. It doesn't take long. It's very, very, I follow a lot of Liverpool social media, so that stuff has reared its ugly head again. I'll give my thoughts on that. That's all coming tomorrow. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned. As I said, the best place to go is our Instagram page. You'll know if there's any YouTube videos, Spotify, full-on podcasts or whatever. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're a listener on the podcast streaming platforms. Keep listening, keep downloading. We're greatly appreciated. And as I said, the Instagram page has the links to all our podcasts and stuff on YouTube and everything in our bio. So give us a follow over there if you're a listener. And if you're a new listener, tell your friends. We do greatly appreciate it. We are the Irish Guys podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and iHeartRadio, and on YouTube. And give our Instagram page a follow. It'll keep you up to date on everything that's happening. If you're a new listener, thanks for tuning in. If you're one of the regular ones, hopefully you're enjoying what we're trying to do at the minute, just keeping it ticking over as best we can. But as I said, I'll be back tomorrow. Keep an ear out. Vesty's got stuff coming to me this week. I don't know what it is he's doing, but he's got something planned. So keep an ear out. There's plenty more to come. I'll be back tomorrow to talk on Liverpool, and then I'll see maybe something later on in the week as well. Right, that'll do me. Thanks very much for listening, folks. Cheers.